A Week 8 Sunday in the books, and wow, what a debut for rookie quarterback Will Levis and the Titans in some beautiful Houston Oilers throwback uniforms, by the way. 4 touchdowns, and Kirk Cousins lost for the year. All that and more coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Appreciate all of the everydayers out there. Make sure you are subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. And man, I didn't see this coming. A lot of people really down on Will Levis and ready to write him off just because he fell out of the first round, and some folks bad mouthing him before the draft even. And then he's third on the depth chart behind Malik Willis and obviously Ryan Tannehill, who he ended up replacing, and then comes out and throws 4 touchdowns, Matt, against the Atlanta Falcons in a Titans victory, 28-23. Will Levis, 238 yards, just letting it fly, trusting DeAndre Hopkins to go pull the ball down. And so some of those throws, like his first touchdown pass, I don't know how many times that gets caught by an NFL receiver, but if you're going to throw one of those 50-50 balls, and it was a 50-50 ball, it hung up there. He threw it late. He's kind of giving a big college pump fake and then throwing it deep, and little offensive pass interference. DeAndre Hopkins so good at that, comes down with it for a touchdown. But I love the fearlessness. He came out chucking it, and he led his team to victory. So fantastic start for young Will Levis.
Yeah, and I didn't love him coming out of school. I never thought he was, the 6th pick in the draft. But where you got him at the very top of the second round, it made all the sense in the world. There's obviously some ability there, stuff to work with. I do think that his aggression was really important here and a great sign. He was not bashful at all. He trusted an all-time great jump ball 50-50 receiver time and time again, and that worked out really well. Last two too. Levis was really bad in the preseason from what I saw too, which is, I think, another reason why people were down on him. Like, man, we didn't even see anything from that guy in the preseason. Who cares? I mean, to be honest with you, who cares? But Hopkins, Henry, and an aggressive quarterback with a pretty good defense, that makes this team pretty relevant. And I think you have to mention Atlanta too. I know Ritter got banged up, but they didn't put him back in. I mean, their quarterback situation's a disaster. They played a lot of zone against Levis. I have a feeling they regret not being a little more aggressive with their play calling. They lost Grady Jarrett for the year during this game as well. London got hurt. Like, nothing's really going so well for Atlanta right now.
Looking at both of these teams, I wouldn't be shocked if there was even a trade done between these two teams. I do want to put a pin in that for a second and tie the trade market in, and we'll be back post-trade deadline on Tuesday's episode here to break down everything that happens at the trade deadline. I was half thinking that once I woke up this morning and we were ready to record our Monday morning pod that maybe Ryan Tannehill was already wearing another uniform. Maybe the Atlanta Falcons and his former OC is a place that he could end up. And I don't know what the long-term outlook is for Desmond Ritter there, both as, injury and if there's belief in him in the building in Atlanta. Taylor Heineke finished the game. He did have a touchdown pass, but he was 12-21. Desmond Ritter was 8 of 12, 71 yards. And Jonnu Smith even attempted a pass in that game, which was could have been disastrous. But, Bijan, 11 carries for 82 yards in a touchdown. Not high usage there for Bijan, but he did have a big play for them. But they weren't able to come back with all the fireworks with Will Levis chucking it around there, and obviously Derrick Henry with his 22 carries and 100 yards as well. And can I just ask you this question too before we go any further? I mean, I loved seeing the old Houston Oilers.
Oh, that was great.
Is it nostalgia for me with the Eagles last week and the Seattle Seahawks this week as well? Like, has anybody improved on their uniforms since like 1990?
That's great. Yeah. I mean, you look at those old Oiler ones. I was like, man, that is awesome. Earl Campbell, that era. And I think a lot of it's just because the age you were when they were there,
Right.
when I started to get into football, like, wow, this is amazing. And that's your first thought. And it's just always going to be ingrained in your brain. I'm not the uniform expert, but that is a great conversation. It's not the way my mind works, but man, there were some great classics that, why was it a good idea to go away from those,
Yeah. And I asked the question on Twitter, and I couldn't, I even expanded the question, not even to the NFL, but all pro sports. Like, who looks better with their uniforms post 1990 than pre 1990? And I couldn't really find anybody with any good examples. And most of the examples were teams that went back to retro uniforms.
Okay.
There you go. So to the listeners, at PD Peacock, at Williamson NFL, let us know in the YouTube comments who has better uniforms now than whatever they were wearing basically when 1989 turned to 1990. Because I don't think there's very many at all. Things really kind of went south throughout the 90s. And those expansion teams, tough for them because all the good colors were taken. So everyone's like teal and
right.
black in everywhere, even where it didn't fit. I think that's a lot of that is getting undone right now, finally.
I'm all ears. I mean, I hadn't thought of it in that light, but I liked seeing the Eagles, the Oilers, all those. That was classic. Real quick on Tannehill, if you were the Vikings, would you be interested? If I'm the Falcons, I'm definitely interested. That's a weird situation, though. I mean, I'm not sure either one of those teams going anywhere.
Absolutely. So 4-4 Falcons, I think they're right where we thought they would be, and it's going to be the same with the Saints. It's going to be the same with the Buccaneers. And we'll find out which singular team gets out of the South, much like last year. And who knows if it's even a sub 500 team. But the Falcons, you think, okay, they look a little better. And it's like, okay, well, now they look a little worse. And I think with the Saints and the Bucs, it's been the same story with those teams all year long. And then there's another team in the South that got their first win. More on that later as well. And the Titans improved to 3-4. Look, you figure out quarterback. It's a big deal for the Titans. I wonder if that affects if they would be willing to trade Derrick Henry or DeAndre Hopkins, because how rough would that be for young Will Levis? All of a sudden, okay, here's game number 2. Guess what? You don't have your 2 best players anymore. So now have fun. Let's see how many touchdowns.
Yeah, right. You're successful. Now try it without these 2. But
Ryan Tannehill seems like he would have to be available. Maybe the Atlanta Falcons could be a spot for him. But how about the Minnesota Vikings, Matt? We're finding out now that we don't know the MRI conclusions quite yet, but usually when it's feared, that's what happens. And it's Kirk Cousins torn Achilles, which is going to put him out for the year for the Minnesota Vikings, which is a terrible blow for Cousins himself because he was playing so good. And the Vikings went on to win this football game against the Green Bay Packers 24-10. And don't look now, but the Vikings are hot and they're back to 500.
They're really impressive. I give great respect and kudos to that coaching staff. I think that they really know what they're doing, both sides of the ball. Cousins was playing great in this game. He was playing great this season. And I started to look at it like, wow, you're more than just treading water for while Justin Jefferson's out. And then he comes back. I think I said last week, this is a top 7 NFC team. I mean, this is a playoff type team with Cousins, of course, and Jefferson going forward. Now, I mean, Jaron Hall, with all due respect, I mean, you can't look at it that way. I mean, everything's so trade deadline centric with these conversations. Like, all of a sudden, did you go from a buyer to a seller in one injury? I mean, maybe. Or do you go get Tannehill and try to see what you can do? Or if I were to trade for a quarterback, if I was Minnesota, maybe an Andy Dalton, somebody like that. I mean, or a Brissett. I mean, maybe like somebody that has another year on their contract that you're not just renting this year. So at least you have something in the cupboard for next year.
Colt McCoy's on the street.
Yeah, right. That's not so bad.
You have to bring a quarterback in because you lost one.
Yeah.
So who's that going to be? And you have to think of something quick. And luckily, there's a timer on it in the next 24 hours for a little over 24 hours to get something figured out if you want to do the trade market thing. And I think if you're the Vikings, you're probably in a place where you believe that selling and tanking is probably not a great way to go right now. But you have to be open to all of those ideas, and depending on if someone meets your price, maybe that's the way to go too. So I think they're having those conversations right now in Minnesota. What about, I mean, Trey Lance would have been perfect here for the Vikings.
I know.
Right? He's from Minnesota. Minnesota kid comes back home and you would have an opportunity to evaluate him for half a year, and you would have some upside there for him. And maybe he's the guy that sticks because you're not going to be able to draft high enough to go get that guy at the top of the draft next year anyway. maybe end up bringing Kirk Cousins back. I don't know. So there's a lot to decide and figure out here for a 500 team in the Minnesota Vikings, and people in the building are always leaning more towards going for it than not, because they want to win, right? They don't want to lose their jobs, and they don't want to. Very few teams are actually tanking. Usually it's management and not the coaching staff that's doing that part of it.
Yeah, and a team like Denver that we thought was tanking goes out and beats the Chiefs.
Yeah. All right, so we got that coming up. Joe Burrow looking great against the 49ers. And
let's not let the Packers off the hook, though. They're a disaster right now.
I mean, the Packers just going in the wrong direction. I don't even know. It's basically the same story you've said about them in the last 3 weeks. I don't even know what to add to it right now.
I know. It's just worse and worse and worse. I mean, they're a tough watch right now. I mean, they pretty much stopped the Vikings rushing game and still got just dominated in time of possession. Like, they can't do anything.
They haven't been able to run the ball all year anyway, and it hasn't mattered. It's been so quarterback centric, which is why it's hard for me to see them, even if they went and got Tannehill. Is that going to be close to what Kirk Cousins was doing and really keep them afloat? It's hard to envision them staying an above 500 team, no matter what the options are at quarterback right now.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
All right. Next, we got Burrow playing high-level football against the 49ers defense. What's wrong with the 49ers? 3-game skid there. And how about the Denver Broncos knocking off the Chiefs? Everything we thought we knew about these teams a couple weeks ago, out the window, Matt. Coming up next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by eBay Motors. Our friends at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for those DFS weekly matchups or you're scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you with players that are guaranteed fits on your roster. So let's see what Vinny has picked out for us in this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. And I think the rookies are the ones you got to highlight here. We talked about Will Levis already, 4 touchdowns. That would work out pretty well for a lot of fantasy teams out there. I think he's going to be a high waiver claim item this week. But in your DFS leagues, because he's probably already owned, but if not, how about Bills rookie tight end Dalton Kincaid? Stepped into a big role with Dawson Knox getting hurt, and he's gotten hot now. Josh Allen starting to look his way a little bit more, getting in the end zone for the first time. He should be someone who's really good in the red zone for Josh Allen and those Buffalo Bills. So Kincaid could get a really big splash and really hit a home run for you in your fantasy leagues now if you're looking for that tight end. And it can be a position that it's tough to find big-time playmakers in. So Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football, trying to help you win your fantasy championship. And eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit, and it's really the same with your vehicle. No matter what you drive, with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your car or truck is running smoothly at all times. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof rack, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. And I love how easy it is at eBay Motors. I've used other online retailers before, and it's just really hard to figure out what your specific model is. Even when you know what your car is, you're like, oh, there's all these other options. I don't even know which one to choose. eBay Motors makes it so easy. There was a huge green check mark, so I knew exactly the part I needed to get. It came in no time at all. Saved a ton of money going through eBay Motors, and you can too. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Let's take a look at this performance here from Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. And speaking of a hot football team right now, you got to love the way the Cincinnati Bengals are playing football. And Joe Burrow at one point, I think it was 20 straight completions that he hit in this game. He only had 4 incompletions at all against the 49ers defense that a couple weeks ago was the best defense in the NFL in a points per game and in a lot of other metrics. Bengals put 31 points on them. 31-17 win for the Bengals over the 49ers. Joe Burrow, 283 yards through 3 touchdown passes, 28 of 32 passing. And on the other side, Brock Purdy really having a rough time, coming off concussion protocol, bumped his head in this game. Didn't look right. I'm not going to put it all on the concussion stuff, but it's a really nice time for a bye week for his dome and just for a regrouping for the San Francisco 49ers. Purdy was 22 of 31. He did throw for 365 yards because they were throwing from behind, which is something the Niners don't usually have to do. 1 touchdown pass, 2 interceptions, almost a third, but it got called back, but he ended up fumbling after that anyway. His QB rating was okay because he did make some plays and made some nice plays on the ground, scrambling as well, but it was really all Brock Purdy. The game was put on him, and he made a few too many mistakes.
Yeah, we'll start with the Bengals. They are back. They are a contender. Burrow is a star. He's back to being a top 5 type quarterback, in my opinion. Chase is every bit as good. I mean, he's an elite player too that maybe doesn't get the A.J. Brown, Tyreek love this year, but certainly is in their stratosphere. Higgins is back. The Bengals defense is quite solid. They ran the ball well. I'm a little concerned about your Niner run defense. Maybe you can, shed some more light on that. But I bet people are thinking Williamson's going to say, Purdy stinks. He turned into a pumpkin. I don't think that's really true watching the game. Like, he made a lot of plays, and this offense moved the ball quite well. One of my concerns about Purdy from last year, when really looking at him in the offseason, was I thought he was kind of lucky as a rookie in terms of throws that were questionable or maybe turnover worthy, that he was just on the lucky side of getting away with those. And I think maybe that's come home to roost a little bit for him, that luck's kind of run out. But he still makes a lot of throws, a lot of plays, and I think he's probably going to get a lot of heat this week or over the bye week. I have had Twitter questions. Do they regret trading Lance? Are they stuck without a quarterback? Should they go to Darnold? I'm like, no, he's just turned the ball over a couple times and got banged in the head. He's still good.
You can kind of watch the 49ers are kind of a Rorschach test right now. And believe me, I host Locked on 49ers, and I've got all angles coming with listeners and takes from everybody about what's going on with this team. They do have to regroup because they're not stopping the run well, which is a thing this team's always done really well. You do have a new defensive coordinator. One thing that's interesting with the 49ers is Steve Wilkes is actually learning the 49ers defense. And that was one of the things that, Fangio was around the team last year in a consultant role. A lot of people thought Fangio was going to become the defense coordinator, but Kyle Shanahan wanted to run the same defense. And Steve Wilkes said, okay, I'll run your scheme that you've already had. So in a lot of ways, Kyle Shanahan's the offensive coordinator and the defensive coordinator, and Wilkes is calling plays for this scheme that wasn't really his that he brought in. And he even mentioned it last week that he's still trying to figure out what that is. So I think the bye week will definitely help for Brock Purdy, resting his brain if concussion, you hate seeing. You've gone through this with Pickett in Pittsburgh. We saw Tua last year. You don't want those hits in the head start to stack up, because that can really derail an entire season, right? So a week off is really good for Brock Purdy and the 49ers. Structurally, coaches getting together, figuring this thing out, and they're too talented to play like they did the last 3 weeks. And the Bengals were too talented to play like they did the first 3 weeks, right? And so if you watch the beginning of the season, you'd think about the Bengals. What now you think about the 49ers. And if you watched just these last few weeks, you would think about what the Bengals now, like what you thought about the 49ers at the beginning of the season. The Niners look invincible. They were number 1 in everybody's power rankings after 5 weeks. So I think it's just, you got to take the long view, know there's ups and downs. And I think both these teams are playoff teams and are going to be in it in the end. But they both are playing different levels of football right now, is what it looked like on Sunday.
So there's a newer site out there, Sumer Sports, Sumer Sports, all one word. And it is a former GM, a dude that went over from Pro Football Focus, very analytically based. And it's funny because I got an email from them. I just signed up for their newsletter for free. And I got an email from them right before we hit record. And it highlights a few of the biggest games. And I went and I looked at the Niners stuff. And I'm not saying they deserve to win this game, but in terms of success rate, they were in the 90th percentile. Yards per play, 8.2. They were in the 98th percentile. Explosive play rate, 99th percentile. I'm talking about the Niners. Like, the offense was quite good,
Yeah, and they still have playmakers. Even, it does hurt them to be without Trent Williams and without Deebo Samuel, which has been a constant the last couple of weeks. But they still have more talent than a lot of teams, even without those guys. And so you can't look at that only. And there's some success happening, which is why you shouldn't be jumping off any bridges if you're a 49ers fan, and know that they're gonna get this back on track, I think. And it's just the nature of the NFL. You're just never gonna roll through and win 17 straight games. It doesn't happen. And so good time for a bye week, I think, for the 49ers here. And the Bengals are right where they need to be, 4-3, and they're in the hunt.
I would say 29 other teams have bigger problems than the Niners right now. I'm not sure the Bengals are one of them, though, all of a sudden.
How about this, though? Don't look now. The first place Seattle Seahawks at 5-2 just leapfrogged the 49ers in the West, by the way, with a 24-20 win over the Cleveland Browns.
I'm impressed. I mean, this goes back to last year and Pete Carroll. I mean, it seems like a long time ago, but we laughed at this team when they said, we're either going to start Drew Lock or Geno Smith. And I'm like, oh, you're going to get the first pick of the draft. Yeah. And now, they were super competitive. They've built on that. I still think Geno's an up and down player, but they have weapons. They played against a really good defense and came back and won it in the end. I didn't think PJ Walker was terrible. I mean, I think the Browns are still competitive, but they're probably not going anywhere.
PJ Walker has an incredible ability to put up a really ugly stat line, but it doesn't look that bad to the eye. Especially one of these ugly games. They both quarterbacks threw 2 interceptions, and so a lot of defense happening as well. There's the guys on the other side are being paid. But if the Browns defense is legit, and they're a good unit, but they're going to have to get some kind of offensive firepower going here. And maybe that's what they're going to be doing in the next 24 hours at the trade deadline to help them get through the rest of this season and hopefully get some good quarterback play from whoever it is, Dorian Thompson-Robinson or PJ Walker, or, for them, they're hoping it's going to be Deshaun Watson and he'll be back and playing at that level.
Yeah. And Seattle had more explosive plays. But this was kind of, scrolling through the stats. I mean, the Browns had the ball for well over 36 minutes. That has to be their formula to win. And if you can't win the game in that fashion, you wonder if you can beat good teams.
Right. Yeah. It'll be a tough go. It definitely will be. It'll be 2 steps forward, 1 step back for the Browns if they
exactly,
because it's the game script they want. Right.
It was ran the ball pretty well. Right.
But good job, Seahawks. I mean, Seahawks are just that team they were last year for the most part, right?
Maybe a little better. Yeah.
Maybe Geno not playing to the level of the first half, but that team in the second half, right? They're a playoff team, and they can beat just about anybody depending on the game. I don't think they're scary coming into town, but they're pretty good in a lot of places. So yeah, fun team there in Seattle. By the way, looked even better in those old retro uniforms.
Yeah, reaping the benefits of the Wilson trade though. All these young. I know they're not all from the trade, but Charbonnet, Smith-Njigba, the tackles, the corners, all these young guys should give you a lot of hope in Seattle.
All right, we'll run through the rest of these, including the Denver Broncos knocking off the Kansas City Chiefs. Crazy. Next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson brought to you by DoorDash. And when I think of football, I think of food. And of course, it's so easy to get whatever you need, whatever you want during the game. It hits halftime. You're like, oh yeah, I need myself a spread. So you hit all of your favorite restaurants locally, even stores, retail, grocery, whatever it is. They're all in the DoorDash app, and you can shop everything you need to get game day ready. For me, I love ordering from my local spot that does sourdough crust pizza, and I can get it anytime I want. I love it. It's perfect for a ball game, and no doubt you can find all of your local favorites for you as well, and you can get 50% off, up to $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23. Subject to change. Terms apply. Chips, dip, nachos, everything you need to make your own DoorDash your own game special with DoorDash, if it's just for you or it's for a whole group of people, or you're getting ready for that sort of tailgate or whatever it is you're doing. Of course, groceries to cook your own. Again, don't forget, that's LOCK23, 50% off, up to $10 value on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and spend $15 or more, subject to change. Terms apply. Matt, we talk a lot about football. What do we really know about these teams? Denver Broncos were the worst team in the NFL. They were 32 out of 32 a couple weeks ago. 49ers were 1 out of 32. And both those teams flipping the script the last couple of weeks. The Denver Broncos on a winning streak right now, including beating division rival Kansas City Chiefs, who fall to 6-2. The Broncos now 3-5, 24-9. It wasn't even close, Matt.
No, they controlled the game. And the easy narrative, and I do believe it to be true, was Mahomes was a shell of himself. I mean, he played with a major illness of some sort, but he was out there and they didn't play particularly well. Quick AFC note, and this doesn't sound like it's all that revolutionary, but every team now, even with the Raiders tonight, it has between 2 and 6 wins and between 2 and 6 losses. You know, like it's not that far from the worst teams in the AFC to the best teams. I mean, if you're sitting there with 4 wins, you're like, well, I could go either way. Yeah, you know, I mean, we're at the Halloween now, and everyone's between 2 and 6 and 2 and 6, including Denver, who are
close to the playoffs as they are the number 1 pick in the draft.
That's kind of where it's going. You know, like these bad teams, all of a sudden, you know, Houston looked like they were going to be really exciting. Now they're in trouble. Denver looked like they were going to get the first pick in the draft, and now they have a nice win. And this trade deadline is going to be so interesting for that matter. I don't know what to take away from Kansas City. It's kind of like the Niners conversation we just had. Almost every team in the league would trade their problems for the Chiefs' problems right now. They'll be okay. But Denver played well. I mean, my biggest takeaway was I wonder if Javonte Williams is back. I mean, I loved him before his injury, like adored him for Dynasty. This was the first game I watched him run going, that's kind of the guy I remember.
Yeah, they rode him too. 27 carries,
yeah.
85 yards, only 3.1 yards per carry, but they treated him like the workhorse back that everyone expected him to be. By the way, a couple of touchdown catches in this one from Russell Wilson. He did throw 3 touchdown passes. He only completed 12 passes. 3 of them were for touchdowns. He was 12 of 19 because they ran the heck out of the ball with Javonte Williams trying to preserve that early lead.
And 5 turnovers. I mean, I buried the lead. Like, I mean, this is a good story, but Kansas City turned the ball over 5 times. And I mean, just Denver only averaged 3.7 yards per play. It's not like, oh, they're going to be really, really good. I mean, a lot of things went their way. You know,
but where I was going is talking about trade deadline. Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton both caught touchdown passes. Mm-hmm. So it might have been the last little,
great way to showcase them here.
Right, going out for maybe their new teams. I think both those guys are very available, and who knows? Maybe Sean Payton's kind of getting his program going.
Maybe, yeah.
All right, let's go to the battle of rookie quarterbacks. I can't believe that C.J. Stroud versus Bryce Young was upstaged by Will Levis's debut, but it was by quite a big deal. But how about this? Carolina Panthers and Bryce Young getting their first victory, 15-13. Eddie Pinheiro field goal to win it for a pretty ugly score. You could probably guess how that game went just by knowing it was a 15-13 game. Bryce Young getting the W, and the Panthers beating the Texans. 1-6 Panthers now.
Yeah, good for them. I mean, I'll be honest, this is probably one of the games I've seen the least of. A couple takeaways were I thought Young played well, but was under a lot of pressure. He got sacked 6 times in this game. It's a minor note, but in the fantasy world, Miles Sanders doesn't really exist anymore. It's Chuba's backfield coming out of the bye. Stroud's coming back to earth, predictably a little bit. You mentioned Levis to start the show. He was the 7th rookie quarterback to start already this year. And, you know, since some other guys we're getting into that 69 starting quarterback situation again. It worries me. I just want to throw that out there, you know, with Bagent and those guys. Yeah.
Tyson Bagent, by the way, I guess we can go there and finish up the rookie quarterback portion of this.
He came back there a little.
Yeah. And he came back there. You kind of knew where that was going to go. He's not a starting level quarterback, but they might have found a long-term, he's a competitive guy. Clearly smart enough to be able to jump in as a rookie, as an undrafted guy. Nothing expected of him at all to earn the backup job to Justin Fields and then come in and start some games and even win a game. But the Chargers were just a better football team, and Herbert versus Bagent's about as big a gap as you're going to find for a quarterback versus another quarterback here. 30-13 win for the Chargers over the Bears. The 3-4 Chargers now had to have this win. We might have been talking about coaches getting fired if they didn't. They still need to string together a few more because this is one they had to win, and they did win. And the Bears, predictably, were not as good as the Chargers on the road. 2-6 now for the Bears, and Tyson Bagent. I think we know who he is, but nice little story.
Yeah, and maybe we've seen this before. You have a quick stint, you end up playing 10 years and retire with a bunch of millions in the bank and hold a clipboard for 99% of those snaps, and maybe he's that guy.
Be a good teammate, be good in the meeting rooms, and have yourself a nice backup NFL career. And as long as Justin Fields is still on the team and not traded, then he'll be the starter back again very soon when his thumb's all healed up. And it is a reminder as well. We've seen like hot starts and teams going up and down. Very good chance Will Levis next week throws zero touchdowns and 4 interceptions. Like that's
good, right?
Thing that happens in the NFL for young quarterbacks. So let's and like even the Brock Purdy stuff. Let's just wait and watch it all, and then get the most information we can before we try to declare anybody whatever they're going to be for their career before they've even played 16 games.
Levis actually comes here Thursday night. So it'll be a decent defense and super short week. Like, that's not an easy, thing to do from your second start.
Right.
Only two little nuggets here for the Chargers. Eckler looks back. We kind of talked about Javonte Williams and what a good player Eckler is. I know he didn't run the ball all that well, but just his presence on the offense. They keep losing pass receivers, and Eckler coming back is a shot in the arm for them. We know how important he is. And Herbert played extremely well after 2 down games.
Yeah.
And I know people brush off some injuries, but it was his middle finger on his non-throwing hand that he injured. But they were talking about on the broadcast last night. They were like, yeah, I saw the bone, and that was kind of cool, but it hurt a lot.
And
he's playing a football game with an exposed bone.
And he's talking about how the cast was falling off during past games, and it stayed on in this game. Forget what these guys deal with to get out there and play sometimes, some of the injuries there. Quentin Johnston getting on the board.
Herbert's a choker. They need to move on. They should have given him that money. And maybe we should ease up on him a little.
Yeah. Absolutely. You mentioned the Steelers there. Uncanny. Somebody, I wish I could quote the exact tweet I saw, but it was really funny. It was like the Steelers have this uncanny ability to play really ugly football games. And so that's what Will Levis has to look forward to next week. And that's what this was. But the Jaguars came out on top. They went into Pittsburgh and beat the Steelers 20-10.
Yeah, and they lost Minkah Fitzpatrick very early. Kenny Pickett got knocked out of the game, didn't play at all in the second half. Steelers offense is still a really, really tough watch. And my biggest takeaway is Jacksonville's pretty darn good. I mean, this is a 5-game winning streak for them. ATN he left for 5 minutes, but otherwise played every snap. Their receivers are really good. This was a good Ingram game. They stuffed the run. They should be in the market maybe for a Chase Young or a Brian Burns. I mean, that's what I would be looking for if I were the Jags. But Lawrence was very impressive. Talking to some of my Steeler folks, kind of just, Kenny Pickett's a first-round pick, but he's the 20th pick in the draft, and Lawrence is a first-round pick, but he's the first pick in the draft, and they're just not the same. You know what I mean? Dealing with bad weather and, pretty decent defenses. One guy is really far ahead of the other one.
Absolutely. Yeah. Trevor Lawrence looking good, really spreading the ball around. Travis Etienne even had a receiving touchdown in this game, but all him in the backfield. Ingram, 10 catches for 88. I thought it was going to be a lot more Calvin Ridley. It has turned out their offense has been Travis Etienne in Jacksonville. So
he's the straw the stir in the drink, no doubt. And they got some good matchups on Ridley on the outside. And Kirk is actually really the number 1 receiver now. But then they found a weakness with Ingram and just peppered him with targets in the second half. They're good. They're good.
Who's not good? The Jets or the Giants. This was ugly football games, 13-10. And I was like, man, they might even bench Zach Wilson. And he comes back, leads them into a game-tying field goal, and then they get the ball and kick the game-winning field goal as well. So 13-10. I don't even know what there else is to say about the ugliness in New York with the Jets and the Giants this week. I'm
scanning the box score because I want to get the number correct. But, I mean, I heard some people today saying, boy, Wilson played okay. He got a good win. I'm like, I don't think you saw any of the game. I mean, he was really bad. We had a DeVito in there for 7 throws. I mean,
what's your scouting report on DeVito?
Right. There's another rookie that might be playing, and magically Daniel Jones gets cleared this morning. I guess he'll be fine. Yeah, but here's a couple little things from this game. I just want to make sure I got them right. Tyrod Taylor, 4 for 7 for 8 yards. Our boy DeVito, 2 for 7 for -1 yards. That was the quarterbacking for the Giants.
Yeah. Deep into that game, they had negative passing yards. It was unbelievable. And Saquon Barkley obviously is that entire offense right now with him back being healthy. 36 carries for 128 in that one.
And the number I really wanted to find, and I had to dig all the way down to the bottom of the box score, 24 punts in this game.
Not scintillating football to watch.
Really bad. At all. Really bad. Brees Hall doesn't get free, then they might still be playing.
Not much to say about the Cowboys, just doing what they do against a team like the Rams are the can we put these together? So we don't have a lot of time left. The Rams are the reverse Philadelphia Eagles. The Rams hang around in the first half, and then both teams on the field realize in the second half, oh, the Rams don't have as much talent as the other guys on the other side, and the other team walks away from them. And we saw a 43-20 win here for the Cowboys. injured Stafford as well in this game. So we'll see what the long-term prognosis is later this week for him. So 43-20 there, the Cowboys beat the Rams. And then on the other side of things, the exact opposite happened, which has kind of been the MO for the Eagles all year, letting teams hang around in the first half, and then they walk away in the second half. 21 fourth quarter points for the Philadelphia Eagles to come back and beat the Washington Commanders 38-31.
Yeah, and we'll touch on these quick. Hopefully Stafford doesn't lead to Stetson Bennett, yet another rookie quarterback coming in and muddying things up. And I think their season is going to go and is going much like their games go, where it started okay, and now we got a bunch of people on defense that really aren't NFL players, and the world's going to know it. Eagles win. They find a way. A.J. Brown is out of this world. Kind of mentioned him earlier. But Howe and the Commanders had a very respectable performance. I mean, this was a good game by the Commanders.
New Orleans Saints back to 500 again. They beat
by them too.
Colts 38-27. Dolphins over the Patriots 31-17. Showcasing that speed. Tyreek Hill, ridiculous. Waddle really coming on now as well. Had a touchdown catch in that one. And last thing we haven't mentioned here, and we'll wrap this thing up, is the Ravens did what they expected, which was win over the Cardinals 31-24. Nice little 3 touchdowns from Gus Edwards for those that had to start him. If I don't think they did, because it wasn't a big bye week. So there might have been a lot of people that had 3 touchdowns on their bench this week in fantasy, man. Yeah,
very well could be true. Not much to add there. The Cardinals made that one slightly interesting at the very end because they recovered an onside kick, but they really weren't close. I think New Orleans is probably back to being the best team in a bad division. They put up numbers, a lot of Taysom Hill, but Indy's not bad either. I kind of have mutual respect for both those teams.
By the way, saw Odell Beckham throwing a little tantrum on the sideline in a game that his team was winning, which wasn't a great look. 0 catches for 0 yards, targeted 4 times. I think he was mad because it was actually a pass interference, I believe, penalty, and he was mad because he didn't get credit for the catch. I think
I saw the play, and actually it was the D-back was in the air going for the ball and end up drilling him like right in the gut. And the first blush, I'm like, wow, that's PI. And then when they showed it again, it was actually a really good call, but it looked like it hurt a lot.
Yeah. So maybe he was mad about getting hurt or mad about, I don't know, but Baltimore wins. They're looking good now, 6-2.
They're in great shape.
In the AFC North. They're a very good football team to be reckoned with. Okay. We got a Monday nighter we'll get to tomorrow. It's a trade deadline as well, and we'll have it all broken down for you. Let us know what we missed from Sunday, what you want to hear about in our Wednesday mailbag as well. I'm sure there's going to be tons to talk about with injury updates and trades and all of that in this week's mailbag at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. Drop a comment or a question on YouTube. Make sure you are subscribed there on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. Matt and I back tomorrow. It's trade time. Peacock and Williamson.